The year is 2001. It's the main event of WrestleMania 17, where wrestling fans are about to watch a clash between two of wrestling's biggest stars ever. At this point, WWE is the most popular it's ever been, with that popularity being spearheaded by the two men who are about to clash. The first one is The Rock, a man who pretty much rose to popularity from what I can only describe as pure charisma. His rich clothing, over-exaggerated demeanor, and way of roasting any opponent on the microphone was something that just made his popularity rise. And funny enough, a big part of that rise was the fact that most of the time he played as a foil to the other man we're going to talk about, Stone Cold Steve Austin. A man that you can pretty much describe as the personification of attitude. Stone Cold had gotten his rise off of his many clashes with the owner and boss of the company, Vince McMahon, acting as a representation for the pushback against corporate America and becoming a rebel to wrestling fans. And it's this rivalry between Stone Cold and his boss Vince that would pretty much personify this ultra super mega popular era of wrestling, the Attitude Era. So when it comes time for Austin and Rock to clash, just like their other clashes, it's amazing. But at the end of this match, something very odd would happen. Vince McMahon, arch nemesis of Stone Cold, would come out and help him defeat The Rock. And the alliance would be sealed even more with a handshake, confirming that Stone Cold has just sold his soul to the boss, Vince McMahon. An action that filled many wrestling fans at home watching this with true distaste. For any other two people, this action wouldn't have mattered much. But this was Stone Cold and Vince. This was the biggest wrestling rivalry of all time. A rivalry so important and impactful that it's safe to say, if it didn't exist, neither would WWE as a whole. As this one rivalry was literally the thing that changed the course of the company and literally save it from potentially dying. Stone Cold versus Austin is the closest wrestling has come to the perfect wrestling rivalry. The anti-establishment rebel of the people refusing to conform to the corporate boss. And with that level of continuity, it's pretty safe to assume why a simple action of Stone Cold simply shaking the hands of Vince was so polarizing to wrestling fans. It had finally happened. The Attitude Era had officially jumped the shark. The term jumping the shark is often used in television series and media, often when a plot point or story is so ridiculous that it leads to a noticeable shift in quality within the show or media, and it usually marks a pretty negative turning point of the show or said media. With the term originating from a series called Happy Days, where one of the characters literally jumps a shark. These events are meant to pinpoint the exact moment where a show just gets so absurd, it literally starts to lose the plot. Whether it's the show Family Matters, going from a traditional family sitcom with important lessons and values, to entirely just being the Urkel show with time travel being brought into the play, or even a movie series jumping the shark like The Fast and Furious, starting off as a grounded movie series about criminals and street racing, to somehow turning into action movies about GTA Online level type heists, while also trying to fight off The Rock as this super officer that's chasing the game. These moments mark the start of the downfall or dip in quality of a specific show or media. And that's what happened when Stone Cold Steve Austin shake the hand of Vince McMahon. It marked the start of the dip of the Attitude Era, turning Austin into this overly comedic character that was somehow meant to be disdained by the fans. And to add on to it, now Austin had gone from this anti-establishment rebel to a part of the establishment and second in command to the corporate boss, which on paper is admittedly a great story and a great heel turn, but the problem was there was really no rhyme or reason for him to do so. And it would only escalate into obscurity with the invasion angle, one where Austin would join up with a bunch of invaders invading the WWE, in turn making the corporate boss that he sold his soul to the good guy out of the situation at the end. And pretty much the weight of this story would have so many implications that it would effectively end the Attitude Era, with some people believing that it ended that very night that Austin shook hands with McMahon at WrestleMania 17. And that's what's so interesting about wrestling storylines. Something as simple as a simple character arc or character motivation not lining up can derail an entire story. Kind of like what happened to the Bloodline storyline. In 2020, wrestler Roman Reigns would go through a change. You see, Roman, who had pretty much spent the last decade battling as this young hero, would return with a vengeance, with something to prove. You see, one thing I didn't mention was that when Roman was battling as this young hero, the people he was fighting for didn't really accept him. They didn't acknowledge him as a guy to believe in. In fact, they hated Roman. So after years of rejection, Roman was back with the simple goal to dominate and this time force those same people to acknowledge him. And it didn't just stop at the people, even his own family members, like his cousins Jimmy and Jay, who at the start would fight and refuse to be forced into submission, but eventually would give in to acknowledging Roman Reigns. Doing it not out of love, but out of fear and being manipulated, because that's how Roman created his empire. Empire. And this would kick off years of captivating television with this cult-like family pretty much all hinging on making sure that Roman Reigns was satisfied, was glorified, was acknowledged. Because if Roman Reigns wasn't happy, then no one was. Every time somebody stepped out of line, they would be met with the threat of the wrath of Roman Reigns. And every episode you would tune into this soap opera-like story, wondering what would happen next, and would this be the day that someone finally stood up to Roman Reigns? When would Roman push too far? And then 2023, it finally happened. See, the thing about Jimmy Uso was that he was probably the only member of the Bloodline who wasn't there due to manipulation and brainwashing. He only stayed out of loyalty, not loyalty to Roman Reigns, but loyalty to his brother, Jey Uso. The only reason he stuck around was for the sole purpose of protecting Jey from the wrath of Roman Reigns. So as soon as Roman had went too far with mistreating Jey, Jimmy finally snapped. And this would lead to him and his twin brother both breaking out of the mind control and finally standing up to Roman Reigns, kicking off a war within the family between the twins and Roman Reigns. A war that would lead to Jey Uso challenging Roman Reigns for the championship and leadership of the Bloodline. And finally, when it seemed like the family would be saved from the oligarchy of Roman,
who the hell? Jimmy, what the hell did you do?
See, at this point in Roman's championship reign, WWE had put a lot of stock and resources behind it and wasn't planning on ending it anytime soon. On top of that, WWE also had a plan set for Jimmy and Jey to face off against each other at WrestleMania. Problem was, this was August and WrestleMania wasn't for another 8 months. So that meant to see this showdown between the brothers, people would have to wait 8 months just to see it. And it also didn't help that this moment just kind of seemed far-fetched and nonsensical. Jimmy being the main person to defy Roman and stick around only due to loyalty to his brother was now betraying his own brother. And to make things even more weird, Jimmy would fall right back in line under Roman Reigns in the Bloodline, making the whole standing up the Roman thing look meaningless in comparison. The controversial idea to have Jimmy turn on Jey Uso would be the moment that the Bloodline storyline had officially jumped the shark, with the storyline essentially going on autopilot for the rest of the year and losing that sense of purpose that made it special in the first place, never really recovering and reverting back to those heights again. Entertainment and media is usually classified by certain eras, and wrestling is no different, with the height of WWE's boom in the 90s being coined the Attitude Era, or even WWE's strategical shift to PG programming in the late 2000s being coined the start of the PG era. These certain time periods in WWE are always given names to describe it. And in 2022, WWE would go through a change that could only be described as a renaissance. Vince McMahon had been the owner of the WWE since the early 1980s, and what that ownership meant was that he controlled everything. Every character, every storyline, every plot point. It would all have to be okayed by Vince McMahon. Going into the early 2020s, the product that we would see on TV would just be the true indicator that Vince McMahon had truly lost it. Silly and ridiculous characters given to great wrestlers such as Damian Priest, a man who during matches was known for going from completely normal to randomly going into cartoony fits of rage. Or matches like the Lumberjack Zombie match where Miz and good old Damian Priest would do battle in a ring surrounded by honest to God zombies. The cartoony and nonsensical world that Vince had created with his booking just started to more and more become one that you were better off watching with your brain turned off. But in 2022, something would happen. Vince McMahon would retire from the WWE after facing some serious and insane legal troubles that I don't think I want to get into here. Just know it's messed up. Just like that, Vince McMahon would be gone from the WWE after nearly 40 years of being at the helm of it. And the person who would pick up the ball as the new leader of the creative direction on television within WWE would be Triple H. And almost immediately, the difference in show quality would be night and day. Stories would start to make sense. Characters would start to become deeply layered and well written again, and even small improvements like the wrestlers would actually wrestle. See, Vince had this way of booking that would make WWE television come off as almost too much of a television show, to the point where you would forget that it was a wrestling show, with episodes of Raw and SmackDown having limited amounts of wrestling in it and more of a focus on the characters just talking. And on the off chances that those characters did wrestle, the matches would be mediocre at best, as the wrestlers would be forced to not wrestle to their best ability on TV matches. But in Triple H's WWE, this was very different. Now with Triple H as the quintessential leader, we were getting amazing wrestling performances every single week on Raw and SmackDown. Like for example, the Intercontinental Championship reign of Gunther, a reign where Gunther, a man whose gimmick was that he believed so much in the sacredity of the mat and the sport of professional wrestling, Gunther would showcase his dominance by pretty much defending the Intercontinental Championship every single week on television in some of the best in-ring performances you will ever see. With Gunther's story simply that his sacredity for the sport of wrestling and being a wrestler made him better than anyone who would dare challenge him for that championship, turning him into this low-key legend of the mid-card and this impossible boss to beat. But not only did this era come with a change of in-ring performing, it would also come with a change to storytelling as well. Whereas the Vince McMahon's era and style of storytelling came off more sitcom-like and straightforward, with pretty much everything being dumbed down to you, Triple H's storytelling was more cinematic, much more complex, and more subtle. And it would create this world where you would have to read in between the lines and closely pay attention to small details and slight hints in the stories. Subtle things like characters being seen talking in the background of certain scenes, or facial expressions and body languages that would tell the whole story. And if you as a viewer would catch these moments, you would be rewarded for paying attention with payoffs to these foreshadowing. This was called long-term storytelling, a style of booking where week to week a bunch of small key moments would play out, leading eventually to a huge moment and payoff down the road. And no story was a better showcase of this long-term style of booking than the story we talked about earlier, the Bloodline storyline. From 2022 to 2024, this style of booking would make WWE feel untouchable, as it brought this more complex and cinematic vibe to wrestling, almost like it had been reborn, hence the term the Renaissance era. But in 2025, that would all change. In 2024, John Cena would announce that he was officially retiring from wrestling, with him announcing that 2025 would be his last active year in the WWE. See, John Cena had built his legacy off of a 20-year-long career of being the ultimate good guy, the role model for kids, and essentially the Superman of the WWE. So in essence, it'd be a no-brainer for his story for his last year as a wrestler being a hero's last hurrah type story throughout the year. Well, that's kinda what happened? Not fully. See, in February, just 2 months into John Cena's retirement year, WWE would turn the ultimate good guy and hero into a villain. John Cena would turn heel. And with a massive character shift like this, turning the Superman of the WWE heel into a bad guy, you would think there would be long-term implications and rich and complex storytelling with this new character arc. Well, that's not what happened. Any taste of the Renaissance era's carefully crafted booking and storytelling would just seem like it'd be absent from this whole entire thing. With John Cena's heel run feeling less and less like a captivating week-to-week story with narratives and more like a desperate attempt at creating a moment, and only that. And this drop in quality would be felt throughout the entire show, as stories would start to become less layered and more random. Characters would lose that sense of complexity and would revert back to being more one-dimensional. And amazing reign performance focused type championship reigns like Gunther's would go fully extinct. This cinematic and carefully crafted world that the Renaissance era had created was starting to look eye-numbingly similar to Vince McMahon's era of television, with actions like John Cena selling his soul to The Rock, only for The Rock to never show up again, and John Cena's record-breaking championship win being assisted by Travis Scott. The New Day ending a decades-long partnership with longtime partner Big E because he can no longer wrestle, just for us to fast forward months later to them becoming a comic relief tag team, having funerals for championships, and adding another comic relief guy to the group anyway. John Cena just randomly ending his heel run and factory resetting to good guy on a random episode of SmackDown. Logan Paul joining the Vision for reasons that I still don't know what's even going on there. Brock Lesnar, and so on and so forth. I could keep going, but I don't want to make y'all days any worse. Essentially, 2025 marked the end of the Renaissance era, and they could pretty much all be traced back to John Cena turning heel being a moment that the Renaissance era officially jumped the shark. I think the appeal of professional wrestling, when you peel it all back, is that it's just a story. At its core, what wrestling is this thing that you can fully immerse yourself into and live in this alternative universe of professional wrestling. And as controversial and as much as these moments I talked about in these videos were disliked, that's kind of why I also appreciate them, because honestly, that's just what comes with a story. There are going to be ups, there are going to be downs, and in something like professional wrestling, a continuous story that never stops, there is going to be a down. It's inevitable. But I think think the fact that these things were able to peak so high should show why jumping the shark shouldn't be looked at as this all negative thing. The great and not so great moments is what makes wrestling what it is. And I think that's why I'm able to appreciate these great moments just as much as these not great ones.